kids. This is Mariah, Cooking is Coping. I am going to teach you today about making venison meatballs with homemade marinara sauce. It's not scary, it's quick and easy, but first things first, we have to start with the cooking essentials. Little bit of red wine. Don't worry, I am going to put some of this in our food later. Okay, now that the important stuff is out of the way, we're going to start getting everything ready. You'll see I have a board, I have a knife, I have some of my ingredients, I have small cups to put those ingredients in, I have the tools that I need. Now, we're going to start prepping for everything. So I am cutting up a shallot, and then I'm going to take my knife. Don't be afraid, I know it's big, but it's okay. And I'm going to make slices into the shallot. And then I'll turn it so you can see it. I'll make slices up through the shallot. And then we just come down with a small dice or chop. All right. Now I'm going to have my talented videographer get some shots of our chopped up shallot. And then through the magic of video, when we come back, I'll have all my shallots chopped up. Okay, so now our shallots are chopped up. Now, garlic. I'm one of those people that garlic goes in everything, and it doesn't matter what the recipe says. If it calls for 1 clove of garlic, I'm probably putting in 4. This is a bulb. These little ones inside of the bulb are the cloves. So I'm probably, because I'm going to put this in both my meatballs and in my marinara sauce, I'm probably going to chop up 5 to 6 cloves, depending on how large the cloves are. I'm going to show you a little trick for getting the skin off the cloves. Smacking it with your knife a little bit better. Besides, who doesn't like smacking something with the side of your knife? So here you go, lay it down, take the side of your knife, hold it straight, and just give it a whack. Didn't that feel good? Feels good. Whack it. Now, if you're gonna slice your garlic, I wouldn't suggest whacking it, because as you see, it's gonna smash it up. Then you just peel the skin off, and you'll do a rough chop on these, just like we did on the shallots. Now, sometimes there'll be little brown places, so just cut that off. Sometimes there'll be little green stems in the middle. I just cut that out. I know some people are weirded out about eating that. I don't really care. I just cut it out. It's fine. I haven't gotten sick yet. In fact, garlic's exceptionally good for you, and it's supposed to ward off sickness, and keep you healthy. And our family's pretty healthy, and we eat a ton of garlic, so I'm going to go with that one. I'm just kind of chopping the little ends off. And that's fine. Doesn't have to be perfect. In my kitchen, I don't measure, and nothing's perfect. It's kind of the only place in my life where I try not to make everything perfect. And we just give a little chop. I hold on to the end of my knife. I hold on to this part of my knife. I don't know if I'm doing it right. I don't know if the experts think that's great. I don't really care. It works for me. In your kitchen, you have to be comfortable, so do what works for you. So now we've got our garlic all prepped up. Earlier, I chopped up some fresh parsley. I use fresh parsley in my meatballs, and I will use it in, excuse me, let me get this in the trash. Don't video the trash, videographer. My videographer is my 15-year-old daughter. She has her own YouTube channel called Cheetah Gal. You could check her out there. Give us a little rinse here. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk to you about is cheese. For the love of Pete, do not buy pre-shredded cheese. Excuse me. Do not buy pre-shredded cheese. If you look on the back of the bag, it tells you some funky words or potato starch or some sort of preservative. That's what they put in there to keep it from caking. You don't want those preservatives in your body. You want just cheese. So buy your cheese that looks like this. I've already grated up some of the Reggiano. I'm gonna put this in my meatballs, but I wanna show you how quick and easy it is. A $10 box grater and a block of cheese, big side or small side. Lay it flat on your cutting board. Oh, that's the oven telling us that we're behind schedule on putting our meatballs in. And just grate your own cheese. Yes, it breaks off, it's not a big deal. If you have a 15-year-old teenager videographer, they will probably eat the pieces of cheese that break off. And she's probably happy right now because this is usually her job. And now mom's doing it in front of the camera, so she's off the hook. Okay, so we just have our cheese. That was simple, it was easy. It took what? Not even 30 seconds to grate up some cheese. And we know that it's healthier for us. Now, I don't like to waste anything when it comes to food. So these ends of the cheese where it gets hard, that's called the rind. What I do when I get down to the very end of that is I throw it in a freezer bag and throw it in my freezer. So you can tell we use a lot of Parmesan cheese in our house. One of these Parmesan rinds is going to go into our marinara sauce later, and that adds an amazing depth of flavor to our marinara sauce, and it's delicious. Welcome back. So now we're going to start on making our meatballs. Today I am using venison. If you don't know, venison is Bambi, deer. I'm lucky enough to have a cousin who we call Uncle Fish, who hunts and fishes and brings us deer meat. And don't knock it till you try it. Venison, hamburger, ground venison is amazing. So this is going in. Now for your meatballs, you can use ground beef. You can use a combination of ground beef and ground Italian sausage. But my videographer, I like that word, I use it a lot. She is a huge fan of venison, so we're going to go with venison. All right, so I've got that in the bowl. With meatballs, you need a binder. You need something to hold it together. That's why I have eggs. So we're gonna put a couple of eggs in there. This is very lean meat, although it does look like there's some fat added to keep it together, but I'm gonna put 2 eggs because it's lean. I apologize that I don't measure. I believe that looks like a little bit more than a pound of venison. A couple of eggs. And then we're gonna start adding our flavors in. So I've got that parsley that I chopped up. That's going in. That looks like about 2 tablespoons. All right. Well, occasionally you have accidents in the kitchen. I told you it wasn't gonna be perfect. Good thing I sterilized everything before we started. So there's my chopped garlic, so some of that's going in there. All righty. And we'll clean that up later when we go to a commercial break, right, Alana? Yep. Okay, so we got some chopped garlic in there, and because there's never enough garlic, I always add a little bit of garlic powder too. Same flavor, just spread throughout, not concentrated in your little piece of garlic you get in your mouth. Alrighty, so now I've got my little salt. So we're gonna throw some salt in there. I've got some black pepper here. So we're gonna toss that in there, maybe a little more. I do have some onion powder. Yes, we chopped up shallots, but remember that is going into our marinara sauce. So we're gonna put a little onion flavor in here. All right, so now we have our Parmesan cheese, which is partially garlic. Fantastic, so we're gonna add some of that. And remember, it was some Parm and it was some, it might have been Pecorino Romano or Parmigiano Reggiano, either way. So we're gonna throw some of that in there. The rest of this we can save and we can top our spaghetti with it later. And we're gonna put in some breadcrumbs. Breadcrumbs, it looks like about 1/4 cup right now. Again, I don't really measure, just kind of do what looks right and feels right. I know that probably doesn't help you all any, except for the entertainment factor, but now, the only way to do this is just get in there like you're doing meatball or meatloaf. So we just get in there and we smush it up. We get it all mixed up. You don't want to overwork it, but you've got to make sure you get all your flavors into there together. Now I can already tell, because this is so squishy, that I'm going to need to add a little bit more of that Parmesan cheese. and a little bit more of those breadcrumbs. The breadcrumbs are gonna tighten it up a little bit. The parm will do the same. So here's our problem, our dilemma. We've got our hands full of raw meat. What do we do next? We've got to wash our hands before we start touching all this other stuff. Now, if I can grab the breadcrumbs without knocking anything else over, that'll be fantastic, especially not my wine, because that would be a travesty and I might cry. So we're going to put in another probably 1/4 cup, so maybe a 1/2 cup total of breadcrumbs. And we're just going to go ahead and dump in the rest of our Parmesan cheese, and I'll make Alana grate up some more cheese before we have dinner so we can have that on top of our spaghetti. So now I'm going to get in here and get some more mixing going on. Here's the issue with meatballs or meatloaf. You can't taste it because you can't taste raw meat, okay? So once you could, if you wanted to, make a little one of these and fry it up in a little frying pan on the stove and see that it tastes good. All right, so there we go. See that consistency? That we know when we start rolling it into a ball is going to hold together. All right, so we're gonna take a commercial break. We're gonna roll these into a ball and I'll show you what they look like right before we pop them in the oven. Alrighty, so we're about to the end of our bowl here. We're making our meatballs. And really you just pinch off maybe a couple of tablespoons into your hand and roll it into a nice loose ball. This takes a little bit of practice, but Alana can roll like a champ now. She's my 15-year-old, So I'm almost out of room here. I've got one more meatball to do, so we'll just have to squeeze it in. I typically make a little baby meatball for our dog, but it looks like she's gonna get a big meatball today. Remember, prep is really important. So before I got started, I made sure that I preheated my oven to 350 and that I lined my baking pan with parchment paper. The reason you wanna do that is for cleanup. No other reason other than cleanup. We've put our venison meatballs into the oven at 350. I set the timer for 20 minutes. It's probably gonna take about 25. I'll probably stick a meat thermometer in them when I think that they're close to done. I can usually tell that they're done by looking at them because I've made them so many times, but you might want to invest in a meat thermometer. These are fairly cheap. It's digital. You stick it in. You were looking at about 135 for your beef. It can be 145. Remember, these are probably going to be moist anyway because we put all of those eggs and cheese and things in them. So now we're going to get started on marinara sauce, and I will tell you that marinara sauce scared the crap out of me for a long time. I would just buy the jar. Remember how I feel about preservatives? It made me cringe. So I've got a gigantic sauce or frying pan, really deep frying pan, nice heavy bottom, and I'm going to turn it on about medium-high heat, and I'm going to pour in a couple of tablespoons of olive oil. I love olive oil. I use olive oil more than I use anything else unless I'm gonna throw some butter in there. But olive oil is healthier for you. So that looks like about a tablespoon. Maybe we'll throw in just a little bit more to be safe. Back here in this pan, I've got just water, really heavily salted water that's gonna come to a boil. I'll put my spaghetti in it later. I am not going to show you how to boil spaghetti. If you don't know how to boil spaghetti, YouTube somebody else who will show you how to do that, okay? We've got this working here. I'm going to get a little spatula, and the first thing I'm going to do when this comes up to heat is I'm going to throw in my shallots. We're going to saute our shallots for a few minutes, and then I'll tell you all the rest of the fun that gets added to the pool. So while we're waiting for that to come up to heat, I'm going to take a drink of wine. All right, so our oil's probably pretty close because it's gotten really thin. All right, so we're gonna throw our roughly chopped shallots in here. Remember, this could also be one small white onion. You hear it sizzling, so it's doing its job. You just wanna stir these around and let them cook off for a little bit. If they start to smell like acrid and turn brown, your heat is too high. Like I said, we're on medium-high heat. Keep it moving. Do not throw your garlic in yet. Garlic will cook even quicker than your shallots or onions, so you want to be patient on the garlic. This already feels a little high to me. You see how fast they're cooking, so I'm going to turn it down just a notch. Now that I've turned it down and my onions are looking pretty good, and really that was pretty quick. I could let them go a little bit longer if I wanted to, but I don't have to because the sauce is going to cook for a little while and they're going to cook in the sauce. So I'm going to throw my garlic in, and my house is about to start smelling really, really yummy, if a house can smell yummy. My 84-year-old grandma lives with us. We call her G. Every time I'm cooking, it doesn't matter what I'm cooking. As soon as I put garlic in it, she tells me, she yells from the other room how delicious it smells. And it's just garlic. All right, crushed red pepper flakes. So this is my little tip, excuse me, I can't talk today, too much wine. I'm gonna throw in my dried herbs now in this oil with my onions and garlic. So just a little handful, that might be too much. My family's kind of wimpy when it comes to spice. So a little handful of crushed red pepper flake goes in the pool. And then I'm gonna throw in some dried oregano. Again, I don't measure. I'm horrible about this, so maybe like a tablespoon. And then some dried basil, and I like the flavor of basil better, so it's probably gonna be a little more than the oregano. Maybe a tablespoon and a half, okay? When you can already smell it. When you throw it in that hot oil and it cooks in the oil a little bit, it just opens up the smell and the flavor of those dried herbs, so they taste more like fresh herbs. All right, I'm gonna throw in a little bit of salt because the salt's gonna bring some moisture out of the onions. And now I'm going to, like I promised, not drink all the wine, but I'm gonna throw some wine in. I don't have any sponsors yet. This is my first video, but so this Cabernet is actually the first time I've drank it, and it's delightful. But we want to pour in maybe half a cup. I don't know. It's gonna sizzle. It's gonna bubble. That might have been more than half a cup. Yeah, there's probably more like 3/4 of a cup. And we're gonna let that bubble off and cook down and reduce. All the alcohol will be cooked out. You're gonna have a rich, deep flavor from the wine. It's not gonna taste like wine. It's just gonna make your sauce have a deeper depth of flavor, okay? I suggest buying, just use whatever you're drinking. You've seen me drink this one all afternoon or all evening, or I don't even know what time it is, all evening. That's what happens on Sunday. You just don't know what time it is. So just throw in what you're drinking. If you're drinking Pinot Noir, throw some of that in. If you're drinking Cabernet, throw some of that in. I would suggest sticking with a dry wine. A sweet wine is going to alter the flavor of your sauce too much. So stick, when you're cooking, always go with dry, whether it's white or red. And pretty soon I'll do us a dish that has a white wine in it. All right, so you see that my sauce has now reduced. So there's less wine in there than there was. And then I'm gonna take a can, and again, I'm not endorsing anyone or being endorsed by anyone, but I just wanna show you that we're looking for crushed tomatoes, and it's the giant can. I don't know, what is this, 28 ounces? 28 ounces, all right? So you want to throw your tomatoes in there. Well, don't really throw them because they'll slop everywhere. But you want to pour your tomatoes gently into your pan. And mix it around. And yes, it looks black and dark, but it'll be red sauce, I promise. Now, see all of that tomato stuff inside of there? We don't want to let any of that go to waste, and we want our sauce to be a little bit thinner and to have a little more. So we're just going to pour a little bit of water into the pan, or into the can, and zhuzh it around. You like that word, don't you, Alana? Zhuzh. We're going to zhuzh it around and pour some watery tomato into there. And I may even add a little tiny bit more water, just to make sure that we've got enough sauce, because these people in my family love their spaghetti and marinara sauce. But for right now, that looks pretty good. I don't know. See, this is why I don't measure. I just think. So, yeah, maybe I added like a cup of water to that. Now, here's where the magic happens. I'm going to throw in a little garlic powder, because remember, even though I put garlic in there, you can never have enough garlic. And I'm going to throw in a little onion powder, because even though I put shallot in there, I like to torture my husband. I didn't put any pepper in earlier, so I'm gonna put a little bit of that, even though there's crushed red pepper in there, so you might wanna go a little easy because you don't want it terribly spicy for your wimps. And then I actually have sugar. And what happens is when you add a little bit of sugar to the marinara sauce, then it takes the acid flavor out of that tomato and it just makes the sauce smooth. And so I add about a tablespoon of sugar, and I'm gonna check this later. And the only way to really know if you need anything else is to taste it after it's bubbled and boiled for a little bit, simmered for a little bit, and you just taste it and see if it needs anything else, okay? So I've got those, and remember how I promised you those frozen Parmesan rinds? So I've got this frozen Parmesan rind that's probably been in my freezer for 2 years, who knows, but you know, they're in the freezer, they're fine. And I'm just gonna slide that little baby right in there. And then I am going to put the lid on this, and I am going to let it simmer and let all those flavors get together, and then we'll have a marinara party. It's been about 5 minutes or so, and I'm gonna take a look at our sauce. So it's boiling away like crazy. So what that tells me is that I need to turn my heat down. So it's sitting on about a 6. I'm gonna put it on a 4. I'm gonna stir everything and make sure that nothing's sticking and it's doing okay. Told you it turned red. And you can see that that parm rind is melting and putting some ooey gooey goodness into our sauce. So now we've got it on a 4, and we're just gonna let it keep simmering for just a little bit longer. Okie doke, so our pasta's been boiling, and I commit the cardinal sin of breaking the pasta in half and putting it in the boiling water because my husband likes it that way. So I just usually pull one out, give it a taste, make sure that it's al dente, a little more than al dente, because again, the husband doesn't like it al dente, and I do everything in this kitchen to make him happy, and the rest of my peeps that live with me. So it's still got chew to it, but it's not too tough. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use this handy dandy little pasta scoopy thing. I'm gonna pull it directly out of the water and let it drain. And then I'm gonna add it right to my sauce. Now I've already taken that Parmesan rind out of the sauce, and I had already tasted it and added a touch more sugar and a touch more salt to it because that's all I felt like it needed. So we're gonna add the pasta in. Okay. So we're finished. We've pulled the meatballs out of the oven. We've mixed our pasta into our sauce. We've added our meatballs into our sauce. I might have made too many meatballs, but according to my teenager, that's never a bad thing. If I had some fresh parsley, I would put that on top. I don't, so I'm just gonna sprinkle on some dried parsley to make it look kind of pretty. And then I will serve it family style on the table in this pan, just like this, and we'll grate some parm on top. So for our finished plate, you can log on to, or see my description. Sorry, new to all this YouTube stuff. How is it, Alana? What are we supposed to tell them?
Go into the channel's description to find the link to your Instagram page.
Go into my channel's description to find the link to my Instagram page to see the final product and check back for some more Cooking is Coping. Thanks, guys. See you later.